12 months, that's all. So I'm still developing my work, which is nice. I have been painting for a few years, but not in pastel. I've been working in pastel for about 3 years. I decided to go full-time in January this year, which has been really good for me. I do lots of workshops and demos, and I try and get as much done as I can in the short space of time we've got. I'll try and not complete all that picture. That's actually from a 3-hour demo, so if you just take a bit of time off that, I'll still show you a full painting. Just a bit about the material I work on exclusively on sandpaper, which is Senilia brand. You can pass that around, just have a feel of that. That comes in pad or sheet form, and it's without doubt the best for me, for my style of painting. I will never use paper again. I'll always use sandpaper for my work now, and that's quite soft to the touch, and it's got good grip as well. I'm not a rep for them or anything, I don't get any permission, but I'm just saying that is by far the best material that you can work on. The pastels, I've used all different brands, but I'm now an obsessive passion about a brand called Unison, which are these. They're very soft pastel, they're almost like a lipstick to work with. Very soft, you only have to touch them on the surface, and it really blends well, the colours blend well. They're handmade in the UK, it's a good successful company, they transport these all over the world, and they're not that expensive. They're about £1.85 for a pastel. They do last quite a while. They last less long on the sandpaper because it takes a lot of the pastel, but other than that, perfect. I use all kinds of different pencils. I find the Derwent ones are quite good, roundy Derwent as well, which is a slightly different brand, part of the same company. And I use those for some of the fine detail work. So generally I'll work on whatever colour. With this one, because it's got these kind of shades in it, I've decided to use this colour background, which is what I've used on that. But I have used dark blue before as well, which it worked quite well in, but it comes out quite nice, and the background colour does determine often how the picture's going to work out. Like that. Okay, so we're going to start with that one. If anybody wants to ask any questions at half time, that's better for me. Slightly deaf, so I can't hear people at the back answering questions, so at half time, if you want to come over and ask me anything, I'll try and answer the questions. First thing I do is sort my palette out of all my pastels. I'll just use the lid of the box, and I'll work out all my colours that I want to use in this picture, and I'll pretty much use all those in this picture. I use a lot of purples and light purples within this water, you can see, and I also use that in the sky as well quite a lot, just to give it a bit more colour range. I start usually at the top of the sky with quite a dark blue, but I use that one. It's not particularly dark, it's sort of a medium blue, but I'll use that right at the top because I want a slightly dark shade similar to that there, just at the top, so it's a little bit darker. And the way I do that is I start right above the picture. The other thing I do is draw it out freehand. I won't use a square, I won't trace. I'll generally draw it out in a freehand way. I think that way you get a better lucid picture and it's more realistic. So we start at the top and we just put colour straight on the top of the picture, right across the top. That's out of my frame range, so just bring it down a little bit more, and that's going to give me that top colour. Then I'll work down to the paler blue.
Do you want me to pull?
Bring some of that in, round there, in between some of these clouds, and just bring that across there, in the middle. And also underneath the clouds that I'm going to put in now, put a little bit of blue there as well. Around the top of the mountain, just get some of that pale blue in there. And as I work down to the front of the mountain, I'll use a very pale blue, almost white, to go down the edges, and that's to show distant clouds. Just go around that with that white there. In the middle, just position where my clouds are going to go, just in a cotton wool circular motion. I'll leave a little bit of a gap there, so I've got a little bit of blue coming through there, and they'll just touch the top of the mountain. Also put a little bit up there just to lighten it up a little bit and create a little bit more interest. As I come down to the tops of the mountain, I generally use corners of pastels for some of the sharper areas. I use them side on for bigger areas. But this particular one, I can see I've got a little bit of a sharp point there, so I can draw the shape of my mountain in there in the purple colour. And just follow that around the edge of there and round to the side. And then use the flat side of the pastel just to fill some of the darker areas of that mountain, that hillside coming down. I'll leave some of the background showing through and bring it down to the lake, which is right at the front there, on the horizon line. And at this stage also I'll put a slightly lighter purple colour, which I'll just use to highlight some of the edges of the hills as they come down, just so I know where the light's hitting these hills. Slightly over this side where the sun's coming from, and just bring that down to the water's edge like that. And at this stage, the other things to remember are baby wipes for your hands and a dry rag, because you're working between colours, so you don't want to mix them up. So I'm going to treat the blue different than the mountain, so I'll just wipe these colours off my hands now so they're nice and clean. Always dry them off, because pastel hates damp and colour, or the colour just doesn't like it at all. Starting from the top, I'll wear the blue first, so I'll just blend that in. I'll make it uneven, and I'm blending it in with the pale blue right now, just to bring that colour down. Because it's quite a strong colour, it will come quite far down if I let it, so I just smooth it off there. The reason I don't come further down is I don't want the blue to come too far into this nice colour. So I'll change my finger from that one to that one now, and then with a circular movement I'll just put some of this pale blue in now. So I'm bringing the pale blue up to meet the dark blue, so that I don't get too much blue overload in the top of the picture, because I want it to be quite bright. It's not a dramatically sunny day, but there is quite a bit of sunshine in there. So just bring that in and then change finger again, get down to the white where these clouds are going to be. I'll just put those in. Oops, miss that pale blue out a little bit. Just put those in so I can see where they are, and then back to that pale blue there. Just get that between the clouds. And then little finger, as I'm getting lower down, I need to work quite small. So with a little finger, I'm just going to squash the white colour in where it touches the top of the mountain range. Just squash that in, and then I'll go horizontal on these. So I want to create like a depth or a distance to the picture. So I'll just put that in. This is the first stage of the painting. It's called the underpainting, and I'll just get everything in place before. And then when I go to the second stage, I put more colour in and more accuracy with the drawing. But this first stage is just a very quick process. Because I'm going to the purple now, I'm just going to wipe that off, just so I don't mix it in with that purple colour.
You could always get a job as a burglar after this, because you won't have any fingerprints.
You absolutely don't. Have to pick everything up with one hand, unfortunately. But I used to play guitar, so my fingerprints are quite strong. It's actually softer than you think, and you know, once you get used to it, and I'm not pressing on, I'm just very lightly going over it. So we just basically squash that colour in there, so it's nice and not too dark at this stage. I'll squash that right down so I can see where the shadows are in the hills already. Now as I'm coming down, sweat the purple off, I'm coming down to the mid-ground now, which is where the hills stop. There is some trees, and there's a row of trees on the right-hand side. So what I do with that is use the dark green, and it looks quite strong, but the thing about the pastel is you can tone it down. So I'll just draw roughly. There's like a little forest on that side, so I'll just draw a bank of trees in there. On that side of the... I'll have to keep coming around the front just to check I'm not working, because I don't normally work side on like this. Further along I can put just a few circular trees in, just to give it a bit of interest. Different sizes, they're all in the distance. There's a slight row of trees there on the other side of the lake, which I'll do in the dark green, but I'll tone that right back because I want that on the other side of the lake. These foreground trees are obviously in front of the lake, so they'll be slightly left a bit darker. Put a few together, make some quite small ones, put little dots in there. So now I've got these sorts of trees in place. With my little finger I'll just smudge that off, block it in. I'll usually use this kind of a slightly different technique with the way, if I'm using anything that grows out of the ground, I'll tend to go that way. If I'm using something that's flowing that way, I'll go that way. With branches on trees, I'll go that way. I'll follow the trunk upwards in an upwards movement and then out. And this is how I work with these as well. So I just slightly circulate those so that they look a bit more tree shaped. Bear in mind I'm going to make those a bit paler when I get a bit more detail in. That bank of trees is going to be on the other side of the lake. So at this stage I want to put the lake in, and I use white for that because I want to know where it is. So it's in between these trees, so I'll just put, using the white pencil, just make sure I'm going straight with it. I'll put the horizon line really, which is where the lake is, and then it moves out to this beck, and the beck feeds the lake. So I just put that over that side as well. So now I know roughly where my lake's going to be. And then when you get on this side of the lake, it's all grassland, so it's like marshy, bulrushes, grass. So to do that, a mid-brown, not very dark, sort of that colour. I'll just put a little bit of that in there, and that'll be the shadow areas. And then I'll go across to where it's going to reach the water, so I'll just put a little bit of that brown in there, dark brown. And that'll be part of the shadows as well that's going to appear when I put the lighter colour on. So I'm creating the shadows now in the grasses as I come forward. I'm leaving gaps between it, so I'm not actually filling it all in, letting the background show through. And I'm going in a horizontal style going across. And I'll just bring that round so I can bring it round to where the water is. And as I come to about the mid-ground, I change to a dark brown because I want the darker shadows at the front because I'm going to create more detail at the front. So I bring a darker brown in now as I come forward. It's a bit lighter in the middle ground, this picture, so I don't want all the light to be at the front, so I'll bring some of the darker colours in there. And I'll also bring some of that into there as well, into some of the gaps that I've left, so that I've got some shadows also in that area as well. So I just bring that down. As I get closer to the foreground, I'll go up like that. I'll start to create the size and the shape of these grasses that are here in the foreground. So just make a little bit more detail there, and then as they go back, they just become lines. A little bit here, maybe a little bit there where it comes to the water's edge. So I'm creating a little bit of movement as well as just creating the shadows. Just change that slightly there because I want it to come out a little bit, so just put those in. A little bit in there, I can come out there like that, just to create a little inlet there where the water comes around. And the second colour is a slightly paler version of the one I've just used. I'll just check which one it is. Use this one. This is slightly brighter, but I do want a bit of sunlight in the distance, so I'm just going to put a little bit of that in with the darker brown I put on earlier. Just bring that across, and I'll just bring that just to that middle ground because I want the sunlight to be on the lake, and a little bit as you come forward, but not all the way down. So I'll just put a little bit in there. And as I come further forward, I'll just put slightly a little bit in there, just to remind me there is some lighter areas with these grasses. And get that down to about there. And then, where it's really quite bright, up near the lake, I'll just put a little bit of light colour in there as well. So I've virtually got 3 or 4 colours on this at the moment. So I'll just put a little bit in there. And then with the blending of this, just wipe my hands again. The blending of this bit is, again, with probably one of the thicker fingers, because I can get away with that. In the distance, I'll use the smaller one. So I just work the colour up like that. And what that does is it blends the colours together, but it also gives me an impression of grasses already, so I can start to see the size of the grasses and where they're going to appear with some shadows between them. So as I work this together, move these colours together, it's also creating the effect I want as well, which helps the drawing. And then as I come further down, I do them a slightly bit bigger because, you know, the perspective, the grasses are going to be slightly bigger down here, so I'll work that a little bit bigger. And as I come down to the edge of the water, I'll just take some of them over the edge there, because I'm more or less creating the drawing as I'm going, and all the way down to the corner there, and then just bring some of those over. Same on this side, just wipe that off because I'm using a slightly paler colour for the distant. So just very gently merge those together there, bring it down to the water's edge, and then start to merge them all together again. Merging them in a line, I don't go straight down, I merge them in a line in a small horizontal, and then what appears is shadows and colours together, merging together. So there's 3 or 4 colours there merging together now, it's creating quite a nice sort of colour shade. And then as I'm coming down, again, start to work a little bit bigger. And then as I come down to this corner is where most of the grasses are and the bigger grasses are, so I'll just work those down, and I'm remembering to go that way and that way, so they're not all going one direction, they're actually turning the other way as well. And then where it comes to the edge of the water, just spread them out so it looks like they're curving around, and then bring these round to there like that. So that now I know. Again, there's quite a little bit of dust drops off, but with these pastel unison, they tend to just kind of disappear. I don't get a lot of dust on the floor. I've got a studio in a mill where I work, but I also work from home as well, and I tend not to have a problem with that. Where the water is in the distance, I'll just soften that off as well because it's quite bright. It's only there to guide me because I'll put blue in there, so I'm just going to slightly soften that off there. Okay, coming down to the water now. Generally start with pale blue for the distant water, so where the water meets, where this back water meets the lake, just start to put some horizontal lines in. This is a very pale blue, but it looks white, but it isn't. It's pale blue. We'll just start to bring some of the edges of the water in now, leaving some of the gaps where it comes into the side of the grasses and comes back out again. And then as I work forward a bit more, I'll just put a little bit more on. And then just round these corners, I'll just usually put a little bit in there, so it's like a little reflection coming around there and then round there. And on this side, the grasses are going to cut right across the edge of the water, so I'll just put a little bit in there, a little bit in there, a bit down there. And then bring the blue in, so in between this very pale blue, I'll bring a bit of a darker blue, which is going to reflect the sky. So bring some of that colour in. This stage, I'll probably run that colour across the water in the lake as well, just pick up some of that blue in the lake, so there's a link between the river coming round and then meeting the lake. So I'll bring some of that blue in, bring that round. I'm going to have quite a reflection of clouds in there, so I'll leave a gap for now. And I'll just bring some of this blue in. It's quite a nice blue, so I'll bring some of that into the water at the foreground there, like a reflection. In the corner of the picture, right on this side, there's a bridge that goes over this lake, and the photograph was taken from the bridge. So there's a dark shadow in this corner which comes from the bridge, and it helps the picture because it helps it, you know, you can locate almost where the shadow is off the bridge. So I'm going to put a very dark blue in here. Now this is a really dark blue. I've got to be very careful how I use this because I don't want it to spread right up. So I'll just do a little bit down there, and then I'll bring the pale blue down to meet it, and I'll actually go over it slightly so I can blend those two together. at this stage I'd always put some of the reflection colours from the mountain in the water as well, so just get a little bit of that nice purple colour in there, and a little bit here underneath where the cloud's going to be, and then a little bit further up as well, because it's going to reflect quite a lot of there. And I also at this stage just put a little bit in the sky, just a little bit in there, just so I've got a relationship between the sky and the water as well, so it just links it all up. So really, in terms of the colour flattening now, the way I do the water is I just drag it down like that. That creates, straight away creates a sort of reflection image, if you like. So just bring some of that down there. We're still in the underpainting at the moment, just getting everything in place. Just bring that down. I won't do my cloud yet. I'm going to do that in a minute. I'll just go around it for now. And then where we've got the foreground here, just bring some of these lighter colours. I'm not touching that blue yet. And this bridge between the blue and the dark blue, I'm not doing that yet. I'm just going to flatten all these nice clean colours off. I'm working side on, so I've just got to keep making sure it's going straight. Obviously with demos it's quite important that you see things from the side as much as you don't just want to look at the back of my back. So I'll try and work things a bit dirty, that one, so just clean that off. I use my thumb a lot for this kind of work because I want it to